Can I continue, Mr. Kabiru?
Yes, yes, sir. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Mr. Kabiru, thank you so much
Yes, sir.
for giving me this opportunity to speak to the audience as an opening remark. Good morning to all of
You're
the
welcome.
audience who are present, and also good morning to Mr. Khalid Shalan, the consultant to Africa for uh, Elsevier. It's a nice gesture from your side, Mr. Khalid, to have accepted our invitation to speak to our people on this very important topic, which you put as writing without plagiarism and proper citations using Mendeley. It's very, very relevant and important to all the educators, to all the learners, and as well as to the people who are interested in research areas. Just to give my thought on the research part of it and the plagiarism part of it. Personally, I believe that knowledge is power, and this knowledge is created by the centers of learning like university, along with the skills and competencies that are required for the students, as well as the faculty members to impart the knowledge in a manner to the students so that they can be future researchers and be a big contributors to the academia and also to the country which they belong to and to the society at large across the globe. This knowledge and power is the real differentiator between the developed countries and the developing countries. If you look at the developed countries invest a lot of the budgets or a large part of the budgets into research and development so that they can really enter into fundamental research and sometimes go into incremental researches which help them building up a sound body of knowledge, a scientific temperament, and also a base on which the further researches can be built upon. Whereas the developing countries find this as a biggest gap with them. The reason being allocating such huge budgets for it is not so easily possible. So therefore, we are at sometimes at the mercy of receiving the technology or receiving the knowledge from the Western countries. Therefore, at times it becomes difficult for us to adapt to the local context. Therefore, the developing countries need to invest a lot of their funds towards incremental researches to relate how this basic or a fundamental knowledge can be applicable to them in various fields of science and technology. Otherwise, we may have a technology, but at the same time, it will not be appropriate and it will not benefit the local context or a location specific context. So therefore, I feel that universities can play a very, very important role, and Elsevier, like of these kind of organizations, can really assist the, the academic community in the developing countries through these various awareness programs that how to really go about research, how to be self-sufficient in your research activities so that we can also publish sufficient number of articles and journal in the journals which have got currency not only at the national level but also at the international level. Uh, the plagiarism, now coming back to the topic, the plagiarism is one of the biggest challenges that most of the academia, the research journals do face when it comes to publishing an article, verifying the authenticity of the citations or the quotes which have been picked up from various previous researchers. I'm very happy to know that Elsevier especially Mr. Khalid Shalan has come forward to highlight on this aspect of it, plagiarism, as an important element which can really make a difference between a good research article and a bad article. So therefore, I wish that all the members who are listening to this lecture from Mr. Khalid will benefit from the concepts that is going to explain to us, so that we can put them into practice and help us build a strong foundation for research in our country, Nigeria, and in the academia all across. So with these few words, I just like to state once again, welcoming and thanking Mr. Shailan, Khalid Shailan, for his timely contribution to the academia. And I also thank him for collaborating with Skyline University Nigeria towards this endeavor, because our focus is in building up a strong foundation of the research in this area. To just mention to Mr. Khalid, we have already introduced a publication on IJBRE, which is International Journal for Business Research and Entrepreneurship. I hope to see that Elsevier would in some way or the other help us to enlist with them. Whatever are the requirements, if you can let us know, we would like to fulfill that and be a part of you in the journey towards the research. Thank you so much, Mr. Khalid. And thank you once again, Mr. Kabiru, and all the audience. Wish you all the best. Hope you'll enjoy this talk from Mr. Khalid.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for this explosive remark. The next item on the agenda is to call Mr. Khalid Shalan to actually present the seminar, the webinar of today, which is writing without plagiarism and proper citation using Mendeley. Ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you Mr. Khalid Shalan. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kabiru Dandadi Garba. Sorry. I would like also to thank Professor Kuta for his lovely remarks and his very kind words. And I would like to thank you all for being part of this webinar today. So today marks our first webinar co-organized with Skyline University in Nigeria, in what we hope will be a more sustained and more ongoing collaboration with more webinars and programs to follow in the near future. Then again, I would like to thank our hosts and Professor Kuta for their kind remarks today. And we will be starting our talk today to wrap up our entire program at about 12:30 West Africa time. That's GMT +1. And our topic for today is to writing without plagiarism and proper citations using Mendeley. If you allow me, I'll start sharing my screen now. So without further ado, so this webinar is being currently recorded, and the recording would be available later on via YouTube. And it's currently being co-broadcasted to Facebook, to our Facebook channel, to our Facebook page, Elsevier Africa, and it should be available to you. And also, you can. There are still vacancies available within our Zoom channel, so please feel free to join us on Zoom as well. Without further ado. So our topic today, we're going to be tackling writing without plagiarism and proper citations using Mendeley. So there are three parts to this title here, as you can see. So there's the first part where we will be covering in general writing and academic writing for scholarly communication, especially when it comes to writing manuscripts. Then we'll be focusing down on ethical problems that could arise with an introduction to plagiarism. Plagiarism is a very it's a very wide topic with loads and loads to cover when it comes to plagiarism. So for today, we were going to be starting with the fundamentals when it comes to what plagiarism means, and we'll be covering some of the fundamentals that you would need to follow to avoid falling into plagiarism. I'll be touching base very quickly with how do we handle plagiarism checkers as well, or similarity software, before we dive deep into Mendeley. The Mendeley part is going to be more focused on how to use it. We're going to be using it with a little bit of hands-on practice here. And finally, we will be moving forwards with the rest of our agenda here to how to use Mendeley in details. And then finally, we'll be providing more resources that are currently available to you, especially when it comes to any research that's being tackled regarding COVID. So without further ado here, so if we're going to be starting with a little bit of an overview of what Elsevier is and what content and solutions are brought forward by Elsevier. So there needs to be a little bit of a question at the start. So what does Elsevier do here? And can anyone tell me on chat right now what's the first word that would pop into mind when they think of Elsevier? If you can type down on chat. Okay, so usually people, what they would think of first when it comes to plagiarism, the first word that would pop into mind in general would be that Elsevier is a publisher. While that is very true, however, there are a few points that needs to be added to modify this. So Elsevier is currently the biggest publisher when it comes to STM. That's science, technology, and medicine. Elsevier is the current establishment has been around since the late 1800s, in about 1880. So Elsevier, for the last 140 years, it has been publishing a lot of journals, a lot of academic books on various topics with a very strong focus on science, technical, and medical fields. However, its portfolio still extends to covering some of the social sciences, arts, and humanities as well. And the interesting part when it comes really to this is that some 20 years ago, Elsevier decided to expand beyond being a publisher into what we call an information analytics business. And what does that really mean? Is that the current era that we live in is no longer handicapped by lack of proper information, lack of information. Actually, we live in a time where there is an overabundance of information, if I might say. It's getting very hard with the new knowledge being produced every day to keep up with what's actually going on within the academic field in total. If I might say, there is a little bit, this is an era where we are overstuffed with information. And one of the problems we face here really is that these information usually come with an overabundance of information and a lot of misinformation in between, irreliable information. And these are really points that are becoming more and more, if I might say, consuming a lot of our time, and then again, not helping really researchers, and especially early career researchers, find the information that they would want. And that's part of why we are currently have been transitioning for the last 20 years or so into a global information analytics business with specialization in science and health. And the idea is that to help you solve the problems that you're working on as researchers. It's no longer just providing content that really matters. You would need to be able to sift through huge amounts of content. You'll need to do a lot of functions that you do around the content itself. And thus there has been an idea of providing a combination of both the content with the technology and the operational efficiency to help you turn your work into actionable knowledge. And the thing is, we work with academic institutions worldwide, research institutes. We work with researchers worldwide in the various scientific fields, as well as working with healthcare professionals and healthcare providers as well, providing them with not just the content, it's also the knowledge that will go along, the technology that will go along with it and help along the way. So just let me elaborate on this idea a little bit more. So as you can see here on slide, these are usually what we call the academic knowledge production process. This is what goes on in the scientific community. This is what goes on into the scientific community to help produce the verified knowledge produced by academic researchers worldwide. And the idea is here, the idea is usually a publisher's relationship with the researcher would start at this point is that somewhere here that the researcher was doing their own research, they came up with the results and they want to publish and disseminate the knowledge that they want to see here. I just want to double check that you're able to see my slides. If anyone can copy on chat. I believe the slides should be visible to you. Yeah. So usually the research process happens somewhere over here. The researchers just do their work, and part of their academic mandate is not just to produce knowledge, but to help share it and disseminate it with the researchers, with other researchers worldwide. This is part of what differs academic researchers from researchers working, for example, in the industry. By definition, it's part of the mandate to actually share and make that knowledge shared within the entire academic community, because this is really how research works. You build on other people's research, and also you, based on this research that you have been building on from other colleagues, you would actually work on as well with producing your own research and sharing it with others. So really a publisher would start working here. An editor working or managing a journal would start to receive manuscripts from researchers who want to share their ideas with the entire academic community. The editor would here act like a gatekeeper. They would determine which manuscripts are feasible candidates when it comes to publishing. And if the manuscript fits within the aims and scope of a journal and fits within its editorial policy, they will then send the manuscript for peer review. And peer review is the key word here when it comes to academic or scholarly communication. Ever since the conception of journals, this has been the way where we can verify the research being published. And the idea is that peer reviewers who are anonymous researchers who are experts in the field would actually, the researchers who are expert in the field, they will be anonymized and they will provide their comments on the manuscripts that they are reviewing. They provide a recommendation of one of four options. It's either to accept directly, and that almost never happens, to have an acceptance at the first round, or to accept with minor modifications, and then they say what the minor modifications are, and finally they can also accept with major modifications, and then again they have to give the feedback, and finally they could reject. Sometimes the rejection comes with a possibility of resubmission, and sometimes the rejection is not, and this is where it should, the researcher should use the feedback that they have received from the editor or the reviewers to actually help enhance his research and his manuscript before resubmitting elsewhere in this case. And the idea is that a publisher would take, so the peer reviewer, if they accepted with modifications, it would have to go back to the researchers back and forth till it's cleared by the reviewers and the editor decides that this is really ready to be published. And this is where a publisher performs their processes of having proofing for the manuscript itself, and then the distribution and the dissemination part. Usually back in the day, it was mainly print for hundreds of years, and within the last 30 years, there has been a steady transition. For Elsevier, it started at 95 with the establishment of Science Direct. And the dissemination process became electronic publishing, and the electronic publishing itself requires tremendous efforts. It's not just putting things into a PDF that looks nice and ready for printing. There are also a lot of metadata enhancement, discoverability work, and maintaining a platform that would give the manuscripts and the research being published the proper visibility within the academic field. Then comes the distribution part, is when the research is being communicated with subscribing libraries and readers, or if it's open access as it's being done now, to become freely available for everyone. And then there comes the part where the research that was produced is thrown back into the academic world, and there is the part where the academic researchers worldwide would start reading and interacting with the content. They would, if they found it useful, they would start citing it and using it as a reference for their upcoming research as well. And so traditionally a publisher works in this part shaded in gray here. However, Elsevier providing solutions along the way. This is where really we are providing more and more solutions to help with every step along that way, ever since the conception of research. When you start thinking what research question is actually, should you be working on? This might sound like an easy task if I say, however, this can get a little bit of intricate question when it comes to your research at times. So for example here, if I want to work with a research topic, so for example, let's have a very crude example here. So I'm a mechanical engineer by training, for example, and if I wanted to work with research that's related to coal-powered trains, for example, everyone knows, it's common knowledge here, that coal-powered trains are no longer a topic of interest to anyone. And the idea here is that coal-powered trains are not really, they wouldn't be what we call a prominent research topic anymore. Nobody's really interested in reading it. So if there is no one interested in reading it anymore, that would mean there is no journal that would be willing to publish it as well. So people, editors, when they come to taking decisions about publishing, they always look at the reader's best interest in mind, and that's why they would refuse to publish obsolete topics, if I say. So this example here is a very crude example, but when you look into some of the very fast-moving fields, it can be a very bit tricky at times. What we used to know about cancer 5 years ago is very different what we know now about cancer. What we used to know about COVID-19 back in January is very, very different to what we know now in October. So thing is, fields are moving very fast. Directions of research within a specific field are also moving very fast, and that could lead to us working on or choosing a topic that's not really best fit to our topic here, and not really best fit to the research that we're trying to do. So again, to help find the decision about which research question and which research topic you should follow, academic freedom means that you're free to work on anything at all. However, there are practical considerations when it comes to it, because you want the research that people are willing to read, and especially funders are willing to put their money and fund your research for as well. So if I say that Elsevier is currently the biggest publisher when it comes to STM publishing, Elsevier publishes about 18% of all the research being published worldwide. However, having a sample of 18% would not be sufficient to take a decision on your research question. You need to have full visibility of the entire academic landscape within research topics. And this is where we had to go beyond being strictly a publisher into providing more solutions that can help along with this. And also part of the very important parts here lies within evaluating the research that has actually been performed, how it's being received by the academic community. And this helps feedback again into the decision-making within the research itself. If you have seen the effect of or the evaluation for various papers that has been already published, or the papers that you have been publishing yourself, it would help within the decision-making process. This is where research metrics come in. This is where university rankings come in, for example. This is where personal metrics for authors would help with their career progressing and would help with decisions when it comes to research collaborations. I see a lot of questions that are being posted in chat about certificates. At the end of this webinar, I'll be showing you instructions to how to get your certificates for attending today. If I might say, this would actually be discussed at the very end. So there is no need actually to share your contact data onto the chat here on Zoom. And we have ways to help you issue your certificates while maintaining your data as well, the privacy of your data as well. And also, I would like to point out that for any questions related to the topic of the webinar itself, or questions that you would want them being addressed within the course of this webinar, please use the Q&A button on your screen on Zoom to address your questions. I'll also be taking a look at the questions posted in the comments on the live streaming on Facebook as well. So please leave your questions. If you are attending this webinar on Zoom, please leave your questions within the Q&A button. It helps us track the questions more efficiently than actually the chat itself. So just quickly, why do we do all this and why we're trying to provide solutions for every step along the way? It's because researchers have very limited time with loads and loads of what they need to accomplish. It's life between not just teaching. Teaching becomes one task of many, many, many tasks, although it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, but there is more that you want to do next to your teaching. You need to be scouting always for new ideas, staying up to date, finding collaborators for your research, writing articles or writing grant applications, managing your research consortia. For example, if you are in a funded project, you need to be monitoring the trends or monitoring your competitors within the academic field, supervising your staff, supervising your graduate students, supervising even undergraduate students who are working, for example, on their dissertations or graduation projects. You need to identify and secure your funding. All of this you need to do next to your teaching. And this is where some of our solutions really help with this. Basically everything Elsevier publishes is available on Science Direct. So this is one of more than 60 solutions. I've only just picked a few of those to be shown on screen. And so Science Direct has 18% of all the journal articles that come from reputable journals worldwide. And it's not really the volume of our publications that really is a matter of pride for us. It's really the quality of these publications and the quality of these journals. It's what we keep at stake. And we like to say that these, when it comes to the quality or the impact created by the research, as usually measured in citations, we are really proud to say that we are receiving more than even our own weight in citations that we're receiving back. And the first step that we took actually into expanding beyond being a publisher was establishing the database Scopus. Scopus is the large abstract and citation database worldwide. So what Scopus does is that it identifies, it certifies the journals that should be included in the database, not only from Elsevier, but from more than 5,000 different publishers. There is more than 22,000 journals currently being indexed onto Scopus. And all of these sources, whether they're journals, they're conference proceedings, if we're talking about engineering and computer science, or books in case of arts and humanities mostly. So journals, conference proceedings, and books, in addition to very few trade journals. All of these have to be certified by an independent academic committee, where we are certifying, and this independent academic committee makes sure that the journal follows the proper academic standards for proper peer review process, proper ethical standards before they can get indexed into Scopus. And it's continuously monitored, because if a journal fails to maintain those standards, it will then be delisted or discontinued with the coverage into Scopus. And the idea is that Scopus here really remains publisher agnostic. That means that all those 5,000 publishers have to follow, including Elsevier's own publications, have to follow the same standards and have to be reviewed independently before indexation. And there are some, you can actually check the list of journals that are being included into Scopus. Scopus does not have the full text for these journals. Scopus only have, what Scopus only has is that the bibliographic data for each article, the abstract and its references, and Scopus starts to track which article is citing which article, and starts to collect this citation data to help establish the research performance. It starts attributing the articles to their respective authors and to their respective institutions automatically. And the idea is that this can be a database that can help you overview the entire academic community, all the reputable journals from more than 5,000 publishers there. And we'll be deep diving, so you can actually access for free, you can find the list of journals that are currently being indexed into Scopus, as well as the list of the discontinued journals that are no longer into Scopus. Scopus, since it tracks citation, it provides metrics for articles, journals, researchers, as well as institutions. And you can view the metrics for journals that are indexed into Scopus for free. So you can actually see their site score or their SJR, SCImago journal ranking, or their SNP and other metrics as well. And you can view them for free onto Scopus. And finally, you can check your own author profile onto Scopus. This is automatically created for you based on the publications you have published within the journals themselves. And also for Science Direct, about more than 20% of the articles on Science Direct are published with open access license, which means that they are free to read for everyone. However, there are still the remaining part of the articles on Science Direct would actually require subscriptions to be able to access those. However, there are also other features that I'll be just reviewing very fast on Science Direct that are freely available to you as well, including what we call the topic pages as well. So Science Direct has journals and books published by Elsevier, and currently we have made all our publications that are relevant with COVID-19 or healthcare related to COVID-19 freely accessible for everyone. Ever since the start of the epidemic, when it was back an epidemic in January, and it's currently still available and freely accessible for everyone on Science Direct as well. Next comes the Mendeley part, and Mendeley will be the topic of our presentation today. So Mendeley is really a two-part solution here. So Mendeley is a reference manager that helps you maintain your own library and collaborate that library with other researchers, as well as manage the references and the citations within the document you're writing. And it works with multiple word processors like Microsoft Word or LibreOffice if you prefer open source. And also it works with LaTeX in BibTeX format as well. Then comes the part when it comes to publishing itself. If you're publishing with one of Elsevier journals, then your article would be on Science Direct. But then again, part of the academic freedom means that you're free to choose the best fit journal for your publication. So no matter what publisher you want to publish with, please make sure that it has been verified by an indexation database, the largest of which is currently Scopus, the largest curated database for academic research. So we just need to cross-check if that publisher has this journal indexed into Scopus or not. The data about research from Scopus is the main input for many ranking organizations. If the research is not really published within a journal that's indexed within to Scopus, then it hasn't been the journal has not been verified, and ranking agencies like Times Higher Education or QS World Ranking rely on the data available on Scopus to evaluate the research output being done by specific institutions. One of the new trends actually in publishing is publishing preprints. Preprint meaning that you publish online the manuscript that you have submitted for review in a journal, or even if you started submitting that manuscript itself. So it's the unrevised version, or it hasn't been reviewed yet by peer reviewers. Or you can do that while you're still working on the paper in what we call working papers. So we have a database for that called SSRN, where you can share your early stage research. SSRN is freely accessible for researchers, so you can actually start your own account on SSRN, start showcasing your work, start getting feedback to it before you actually publish the papers, and you can also read other early stage research. Of course, it's very important to say that when you are working with research being done, when you're talking about research being at the early stage, it needs to be handled very, very critically when it comes to just adopting information coming from preprints, because they have not yet been peer reviewed. And it's divided into research networks. Each research network represents a specific topic. So when you are posting your preprint there, it's read by people in very specific, within the very specific field that you are working on. Journal Finder is a smart tool that can help select an Elsevier journal that's best fit for your manuscript. And also we have Researcher Academy, which is a free platform, a free e-learning platform for researchers. It's completely free. It has many courses that can help researchers write courses on writing your manuscripts, courses on ethics, on getting funding, on actually promoting your own research, on becoming a reviewer, and much more topics. All of these courses are certified by Researcher Academy from Elsevier, and they are entirely free and accessible to all of you. So in general, as I said, so this is what we started doing, really, the journals and the books publishing. And currently, as I said, we publish about 18%. Those 18% receive about 26% of the citations being published worldwide. So it's getting more than our own volume in citations. It shows the quality of the research that we're working on. About 30% of the Elsevier journals are ranked #1 in their subject areas. This is based on a 2018 statistic, and the journal and the books already having a relative citation impact that's almost double the average when it comes to the industry. Science Direct, then again, you can create an account for free on Science Direct and discover many personalized features, like the personal recommending articles that would be interest of you. And one of the new things is that we established what's called as topic pages. These are free content on Science Direct itself. So when you go to www.sciencedirect.com/topics, you can view and navigate through the topic pages. Or if you are reading an article on Science Direct, if it's open access, for example, or free access, if you click on one of the key terms being discussed here, the topic page consists of a definition for this technical term, as well as the essential data that you would need to know. And they are extracted directly from Elsevier books. Whether or not you have access to the book, the topic page itself remains free with all the excerpts coming out of those books, all the figures, all the tables, all the graphs, they remain accessible for free. And the idea is that we need a one-stop page that will give you the introduction and the basics of a very specific topic that you are working on. And Scopus, as I said, is the largest abstract and citation database. The idea is that there are about 100,000 journals available worldwide, 43,000 of which claim to be peer-reviewed, and Scopus indexed about 22,000 of these. They come from 5,000 publishers. They go all the way, and we track the citations back to 1970. Some of the records that are included into Scopus go back to the 18th century. Actually, we are very proud of our of having, I would say, better more balance within the global representation. We have more titles coming from Latin America, Africa, and Middle East, as well as South Asia. And we are really proud to be working with a lot of quality journals in these areas to have them indexed into Scopus. So if you are working on a journal or you are in contact with the editorial board of a journal, please have them get in touch with us so we can let them know what are the standards being employed by Scopus, how they could adopt the standards, and what's the application process to have the journal indexed into Scopus. And Scopus, as I said, covers the four main fields of science: health sciences, life sciences, physical sciences, as well as social sciences in a very balanced way. It's being used by the ranking agencies. Times Higher Education, QS, they rely solely on Scopus data. Other ranking agencies, they use Scopus data within other data as well to evaluate the ranking. So to our topic today, on writing research papers, I'm going to be giving quick pointers on writing manuscripts so that we can realize which parts are more affected by or more susceptible to plagiarism issues as well. So in general, if we're talking about, if you want to get your research published and promoted, as we said earlier, you'd have to choose a good topic. You'd have to collect your own data and use references that come from reputable journals. You have to write quality manuscript. And then if your manuscript is published in a prestigious journal that you know it will have more faith by the academic community and it's more likely to be cited as well. And there is some work that you can actually do to promote your paper once it has been published, whether it's promotion that's being done within academic networks or academic social media conferences. And if you can provide lay summaries, videos, and innovative illustrations. And the question comes when you want to publish is really, if you are ready, then you have an up-to-date review of a subject or field. So that means that the first part you need to work on here is really reviewing already existing literature and already previously published research before you can actually claim to, or you can start writing your own research. So there's always going to be a part where you are using other people's ideas that they have already presented. And this is very, very critical when it comes to how do you integrate the information that has already been published. The second point here is you need to have a significant added value to what is already known. If you are publishing an original article or original research paper, then you need to have this significant enhancement so that this is your own work that you have done yourselves, and you need to have original results or even methods that you are presenting and sharing with the academic community. If your entire paper is outdated, it's a duplication of published work, then it's not really published. And also when it comes to so if there is a part where you are trying to use somebody else's work, this needs to be declared, because you cannot claim or pass on somebody else's work as your own. That's a grave plagiarism problem that you could have within your work. And also you need to have the correct conclusions for them. So these are on screen some of the questions that you would need to ask yourself before you start writing your manuscript in the first place. And the general structure for a paper is that if you're writing a research paper, then there is the title, abstract, and keywords. Then comes the introduction part and methods, results, and discussion. Then comes conclusion, acknowledgement, references, and supporting materials. So that's the common theme for the structure of an original research paper. Of course, there could be specific guidelines by specific journals to how the sections should be named or how they should be structured. But in general, it would go along the lines of having this structure as the standard for original research papers. If you are writing a review paper, That's a paper that only summarizes the current state of the art and the currently available literature. So instead of having methods and results here for the original work that's being done, it would be structured more like a dissertation, having body or main text, headlines, and so forth, till you reach the end part of the review paper. It's important to note that review papers are commissioned, usually commissioned by editors. What happens usually is that an editor would ask a researcher who's prominent in their field to actually prepare and submit a paper for the journal as a review paper. There are a few cases where you can actually propose a review paper and submit a review paper on your own to an editor, but in most cases it's commissioned or it's being requested by the editor themselves. As just a quick overview of the titles, the title need to attract readers' attentions, contain the fewest possible words, adequately describe content. They should be informative and concise and identify the main issue. And if I might say, you cannot reuse a title from another paper. The title has to be unique, has to be something that you have actually that would grab the reader's attentions. So you would need to apply your own ingenuity into having a concise article that's attractive to readers. That's the first thing that the eyes will fall upon. The next section is the abstract, and the abstract is where you're trying to convince or to attract the reader into reading, into going through the full text of your papers. Usually the abstracts are freely accessible, whether or not the subscription is there. So you want to make a good convincing pitch to anybody who's reading the abstract that this is a paper that's worthy of their time. And you would need to summarize the entire paper, the problem, the methods, the results, and conclusion within one paragraph. Usually it's 150 words. You need to make it interesting and understandable. You need to make it very accurate and specific. There are 4 main components when it comes to a successful abstract. You need to have a purpose or motivation. Why are you working on this and what this paper is trying to establish or to achieve? What's the approach that you have done within the paper itself? What are the findings? And you would need to put in your most exciting findings and what's the value of all of this? Why is this entire work important? And why are your results important within the field itself? If you have these 4 components included in your tiny abstracts, in your 150 words, that would actually mean that this is a successful abstract if you have those 4 main components, and then you are ready to actually start attracting readers. Remember that unless specified otherwise by a journal, usually an abstract is within a limit of 150 words. So this is again more emphasizing about the value of abstract. And remember that all the words that you usually, when you search for an article, a search is being done mainly within the title, abstract, and the keywords. These are publicly available elements of your manuscript. So you want to put in the keywords, the important keywords that your paper is working on within, you want to put in those keywords within, within your title to attract attention. If not in your title, then in your keywords. And there is more room to include the interesting keywords about your paper within the abstract itself. So the keywords are labels or the hashtags you're using to describe your manuscript. They're using by indexing and abstracting services, and they should be specific. You could only use established abbreviations. Actually, DNA is more popular than its expansion, for example. So if it's a well-established and well-known abbreviations, then it's okay to use them as keywords. Otherwise, you would need to use the entire full expression instead of the acronym for it. So next part, so just one point that's important about the abstract, we don't use references within the abstract itself. So if you are, so this is where it should be used within the manuscript itself when it comes to this. And the next part is the introduction, and that's the part where the most problems with that are related to plagiarism really stem from. So this is where you provide context to the readers. You state the problem that you're working on, the already existing solutions and their limitations. These are solutions that have been provided by other people, and you're trying to put a positioning, to provide a positioning for your paper within the body of literature or within the entire established or published work. So you would need to say that researchers X and Y worked on method Z and they got the following results. However, it had the following limitations, and the process researchers K, L, and M, they have worked on another topic. And that other topic has actually, they have used another method, found those results. However, the approach we're using combines some features from both methods, and it was able to establish better accurate results as will be shown. So this is where you're really trying to position your own research within the grander context or the grander body of literature others. So this is a very tricky part, because you will be mentioning a lot of people's original work and original ideas, and you have to give them proper credit. If you fail to do this properly, then you would be falling into plagiarism, because if I see an idea in your own manuscript and I don't know where it comes from, the assumption is that it is something that you have done yourself. And if you are attributing to yourself something that other people done, then that's definitely plagiarism that you're doing here. The last part of the introduction would be a layout, and you'd be describing the general structure of your manuscript. What are the sections, what to expect in each section for the readers. And very important thing, you cannot reuse your introduction from one paper to the other. So you could be working on the same project, on the same research topic that you're working on, and you've published a first paper with the results you've achieved. Then you did more work and found more original results, and you're publishing them. You cannot reuse the introduction. That's self-plagiarism. You could not pass off your own previous work as new work or new writing that's being done. That still remains a misconduct or an ethical violation when it comes. So it's not just plagiarism, it's not really passing off others people's work. It could be also passing off your own previous work as original or new work being written again. The methods part is where it gets really tricky when it comes to plagiarism. So the methods part is where you are describing how the problem was studied, what approach did you use. It has detailed information. It has information about equipment or devices you've used, or software that you've used if you're working on computational, or the method that you used in your field work, for example, depending on which approach you're working with here. And the idea is that you do not go into extreme details about procedures that are already very well established within the field. You would have to refer to people who actually prepared and worked on this methodology themselves. And once you have done that, it's really okay to proceed forward. It's good. You can provide more details about all the materials you used within supplementary within extra or supplementary information as well. But it is really, really important here. One thing that's really important here is that you would need to, sometimes it happens that since you're using a lot of technical words, a lot of technical phrases, describing equipment that have been manufactured by third-party manufacturers, for example, there can be some text similarity when it comes to methods, since it's very intense on technical keywords, sometimes brand names and so forth. So we would expect, and it would be okay to expect, it would actually be okay to expect some plagiarism, not plagiarism, what we call text similarity to occur. That should be totally okay. However, this would need the assessment of the reviewer or the editor to determine if this is just a text similarity because you're using similar equipment and similar methods as the other papers, or if they are actually using as is, or you're plagiarizing other people's work or methods that they have used. So text similarity in its own does not really mean plagiarism, and the lack of text similarity does not mean that you are okay that this is not plagiarism. We'll be diving more into this specific point a little bit later with our presentation today. The last part is the results. This is your own results. These are the figures that you have actually established. So you need to include only the data of the primary importance, not because you could have tons of results, gigabytes of data for your results. So you could, or you should only include the data of primary importance. You can always publish the remaining of data as you. This is actually one of the new trends when it comes to academic research, is that people are trying to showcase their entire data sets, which could be very large in size or even up to gigabytes, but people are sharing entire data sets. But this is not done within the manuscript itself. It's usually a supplementary part or a separate file that you can link within your paper. However, this helps give you more credibility, helps the reproducibility of your research, and it's more prone to getting cited. So the paper that's accompanied by data sets is more likely to be cited. However, if as it goes into the writing itself, we only include the primary importance data. The entire data sets could be a supplementary part to the paper. You try to organize your data. You want people to understand what you have accomplished really here. So you're using subheadings to combine data that are similar together. You need to be clear and easy to understand. Highlight the main findings and feature the unexpected ones. And this calls on for a little bit of a discussion on outliers. In general, it's not okay to remove outlier data or actually any data from your output. But in practical considerations, there are many cases where we are putting filters, or we are filtering our results one way or the other. So if you are cropping or manipulating the data itself, it should be very clearly stated within the writing that the results shown here were actually filtered by the following rules, for example. And because you shouldn't really shy away from the outlier data, because what can seem incomprehensible to you or not following the pattern you have or the trend that you want to establish could actually be a specific case or a specific point where there is a factor that you haven't taken into consideration acting to it. Somebody else could read that paper and find out, okay, so that's an interesting point there. That actually might be something they would want to work on. For example, always try to provide statistical analysis and use illustrations and figures. This is where really a picture is worth 1,000 words. Next comes the discussion part of a paper, and this is where you're doing interpretation of the results. So as you can see here, when it comes to the results and discussion, we're not expecting much of other people's work. So this should be more into your own work. Unless you are in the discussion comparing published results with your own, then you have to give proper credit to the results that have been published elsewhere. Otherwise, anything you put into the results and discussions should be your own work, should be your own labor, and the own results that you've achieved out of your own research and your own study. If you are cross-referencing or matching it with other results, it should be clearly acknowledged within the results. Otherwise, you will be giving the impression that the other people's results that are included here are also your own, which is stealing other people's work, or what we know as plagiarism. Just be careful when you are in the discussion part. Don't go hyperbolic. Don't go statements that are so grandiose and they go beyond the results, what the results can support. You're trying to overreach with the conclusions coming out of your results. Do not use non-specific expressions. If you are coining new terms, and this happens all of the time, make sure that you have provided an explanation for these earlier on in your paper. It could be in the introduction, for example, and sometimes it could be mentioned within the abstract itself. And you can provide speculation. So what you are guessing, what's the interpretation of those results, but just don't rely on imagination, don't go hyperbolic with those. And those speculations, they need to be stated as something that needs to be studied further. So it should be a part of the future work that needs to be done, which is really a better place to have it within the conclusion itself. You have to be clear, provide justification for your work, and explain how your work advances the current state of knowledge, and suggest the future work or future experiments that need to be done in the conclusion section. The references part is a very important part. So you need to say, so if you are using other people's ideas and you're saying this is other people's ideas, you need to let the readers know where they could actually go and read more about that specific topic. So this is where you have actually to cite those mentions of other people's work with where the people can read or verify that cited information. Just make sure you're not using too many references, that all the things that you are citing and the references you're using are actually related to your work. So just don't give gift citations, citing or giving credit to other people's when their work is not really relevant to your research. And ensure that you have fully understood the material you're referencing. So you really don't want to find somebody citing you for saying that people should go right when your actual research work, you've always been saying that people should go left with this topic. So you don't want your results misinterpreted, and you don't want to do upon others what you would hate to be done upon yourself. So just make sure that when you're citing somebody else's work, that you are keeping their intended meaning, and you're using the style assigned by the institution or the journal you are publishing with, and use credible resources for it. We do not put references as a copy and paste article. There is a more technical way of providing the references, whether it's within the text itself, what we call the in-text citation, and the list of references at the end usually covers important points, or what we call bibliographic points, like who the author is, what's the article title, where it was published, what's the journal's name, what volume, what issue, and sometimes what pages. Where could it be found, and sometimes when it was last accessed as well. And this is really something that we will see how it can be done in an automated way when it comes to Mendeley itself. If you are writing a review paper instead of an original research paper, these are some of the ideas that you would need to do. If you are writing a review paper, then 100% of the content you are actually describing came from other people's work. So you have to be very, very careful to give everyone's their proper credit for the ideas that you have built your review paper upon. Supplementary materials could be raw data, process data, software, like codes, for example, tables, figures, videos, and audio. Open science, meaning that you should expose more of your own research to others. You should have more transparency so that other researchers could reliably replicate your data. This would help push the science forwards, and also would help make the idea becoming more and more applicable and more into new technologies as well. So just as a recap for this, we have the structure of an article has a title, abstract, keywords, the main text organized in what we call IMRAD, introduction, methods, results, analysis, and discussion. And then you have the trailing part of a paper, conclusion, acknowledgements, references, supporting materials. Acknowledgements is where you're giving proper thank yous to everybody who has helped with your own research, but they do not qualify with the scientific input to become an author. So if their input is not really part of the science being interpreted within the paper itself, or the knowledge being generated itself, then if they just help with setting up your equipment or any of that, this is where you would use the acknowledgement section actually for this. This is a little bit of an advice to overcome the writer's block, is to use an outline that's too detailed as possible. And then remember that if you reach a level where there is an idea, every paragraph should present an idea. So if you have an outline explaining what each paragraph within your article would be discussing, that would help much with your writing block. And also when it comes to the order and building up your article, you need to remember one thing here is that you should start with your own data. That's the original input of your work. That's where your work or the core of your research really is. So you should start by your own research output data organized into figures and tables, and then describe how you got those data and figures, describe them more into the results and the discussion. So you start from the bottom up. Don't start writing a paper, writing the title, the abstract, and then the introduction. Usually that results in a poorer quality for the manuscript than building it from bottom up. And so after you have described your original work, then you have more time to actually integrate other people's work and do the proper citation and referencing, and also customize those parts to serve the core of your paper that's being described here. So then you would be writing the conclusion, then the introduction itself, and then the very crafty part of the title, abstract, and keywords. Keep those to the very end, or if you are writing them, make sure that they are updated after you have written the entire thing finally. So just as a quick exercise before we jump into the second part of this presentation, using a spelling and a grammar checker, how many mistakes would you see in this sentence, for example? If you can type down on chat. So can you say how many mistakes are you finding here if you can type down on chat or in the comments? So I can see people starting to detect some of those here. Okay, somebody is getting 4. That's actually better. So it's a very important thing that if you have written the piece yourself, it's very, very possible that you would actually start to miss the mistakes being done here. And if you are reading this as a fresh eye, then it's more likely that you'll get more of the mistakes being done here. So this actually has 6 mistakes. Some of them are spelling. This is grammar. This is also spelling. This is more of a writing or a spelling, if I might say. There should be a space bar here. And this is another grammatical mistake. And this is also another spelling mistake. So there are 6 actually mistakes when it comes to the part that you're seeing here. We would recommend strongly to use a spelling or a grammar checker, even if it's the built-in grammar and spelling checker within your word processor or your writing software itself. So next to the ethic pointers here, so there are 3 most common forms for ethical misconduct that you would expect to see, that you would want to really avoid when it comes to research paper. So these 3 are really the most serious and the most grave mistakes that you could actually do. So these are mistakes that have actually ended researchers' careers. They have destroyed really their credibility completely, and they have resulted in all of their work being done all over the years, being really scrutinized. And usually when it comes to finding a mistake of this gravity, usually the researcher's entire life work is being put to a re-evaluation. And it usually results in multiple, what we call retractions. So the thing is, when a paper is published and it already contains an ethical violation, and it has been called out, so because the editor or the reviewers failed to notice that ethical violation during the peer review process, what you would actually see here is that this article is not deleted. because nothing online is really deleted. It remains on the publisher's page, but then it has a huge watermark saying that this is a retracted article. This is no longer an article that you should trust, and it would state very clearly what the reason for retraction was. And so the first problem you would see here, and the most grave one, is fabrication. This is where you're making up research data. This is not research data that has been done due to experiments. You just sat in your chair and you started describing research data that were not actually the result of any actual research. You're making up your research data. So everything you are mentioning is really worthless, because this is not actual research you are describing within your paper. So papers with fabricated research data, they result in very heavy retractions and complete destruction of the author's credibility, because they plain right lied about having results that are not really there. The second one is falsification. This is where you are manipulating your research data that you have actually done yourself to showcase something that's not really there. And if this is done intentionally, this destroys a researcher credibility. Sometimes honest mistakes happen, and they also result in retractions. There was a case last year where a Nobel laureate actually asked for her own paper to be retracted because she found out there was a grave mistake when it comes to the analysis of data. It's an honest mistake. However, it results in a retraction, and the retraction notice actually described what resulted in the retraction process clearly, so people know that this was an honest mistake being done in the published work. However, if this is resulting from falsification, and it's usually being called upon by other researchers who have actually requested the editor retract this paper, this is really a serious problem, and it's very harmful to a researcher's reputation. And the third one, where we'll be diving on for the upcoming part, is the plagiarism part itself. So plagiarism, in a very simplified definition, it would be passing off others people's work as your own work here. So let's dive into a little bit into the plagiarism part. So it's one of the most common, I would say. It happens more often than fabrication or falsification, sadly, is plagiarism. And this is where you deliberately, or sometimes by accident, there is something called accidental plagiarism, use another people's work without their own permission and not giving them proper credit or acknowledgement for it. Plagiarism can have many forms, starting from literal copying, which is usually the extrinsic kind of plagiarism that's being detected by software. However, even paraphrasing, like rewriting others people's work, is still plagiarism. So just because you are using your own words and your own structure and you're doing paraphrase, still means that you have plagiarized others people's work unless you have given them proper credit. And this can include the data, the words and phrases, ideas and concept, and even sentence structure could be plagiarized of others people's work. So how do you really address this? We have actually a fact sheet from Elsevier that you can go for or through with, and it has some really interesting details about plagiarism. So if you visit this shortened link here, you can find more details about plagiarism as well. However, when it comes to plagiarism, there is the extrinsic part. This is literal copying, or the copycat plagiarism. This is where you're reproducing a work word for word, in whole or in part. You're just borrowing sentences, or sometimes really borrowing paragraphs, and that's really bad. And we've seen both cases without permission and acknowledgement of the original source. And the second, so this is only acceptable to take other people's word for word only if you are putting quotation marks and you are notifying your reader before they reach the quotation mark that what they will be about to read is actually quoted directly from someone else. And so it has to be very clearly marked with quotation marks, and sometimes being in italic format if the style being used requests it. But the minimum here is the quotation marks and the proper notice. And the proper notice here is that this is somebody else's words that I'm using word for word here. This is something that you would only do if there is a very specific need for doing it that way. Okay? Unless there is a very specific need to use other people's word for word, and this is more common within social sciences and humanities than to have it in hard sciences. However, this should be done very rarely, only on high need basis only, when the actual phrasing actually means something that you need to use the actual phrasing itself. The other kind of plagiarism here is paraphrasing. So this is reproducing somebody else's work. You're not copying word for word. You're using your own words, your own writing style, your own description of their work. However, if you are not having proper permission or acknowledgement of the original source, then that would mean that this work is really not admissible any. Then this work is not really. I would say it still remains as plagiarism, and the reason why you would see this. So imagine that you have written some paper. You've kept it, you have published it in a journal, or kept it as a white paper, or used it in a classroom, for example, or any form of dissemination that you have already done. And somebody else read your paper and starting writing it off completely paraphrased. So you have discovered that there is a very strong correlation between a specific drug and a specific side effect, for example. So that's a very important discovery there. And however, if you are saying that if somebody else takes your work, if somebody else takes your work here and describe it as their own work, because they have the original writing, so they have written original writing there, they are literally stealing your own work, and they are passing your own discovery as their own discovery there. I'm getting some feedback that the link here is not working. I believe it has been moved within researcheracademy.com, and I will try to provide the original link within the website that you would, where you will be receiving your certificates at the end. So paraphrasing is only acceptable if you are making a reference to the source, if you are integrating the source within your writing by giving proper notice, and you are not changing the meaning intended by the source itself. So always give credit with in-text citation, with integrating the source, or having some section in the writing itself, alerting other people that this is a part that's that you're using from another source. And then you, at the end of the paper, you need to put in the reference list here. So if you want to support your work with other people's ideas, remember that you can use the quoting mechanism, where you're putting the quotation marks, you're using other people's work word for word, and you are giving proper notice before the quotations and in-text citation, as well as the reference at the end. Then again, paraphrasing is where you are using an idea from a single source in your own words and voice. Summarizing is where the statement you are writing is coming from multiple it is not that comes from multiple sources and just amalgamated into just one sentence. For example, this is called summarizing, where the same sentence or the same ideas have multiple sources coming from as well. So there is not really a single source to copy and paste from. You will be just summarizing other people's work. And always remember to write in your own words and do not change the intended meaning. Don't start off with other people writing and modify it. That still remains plagiarism there, because you are using somebody else's voice to describe their own ideas. So that's basically very similar to copy and paste here. So let's just have a fictitious example here to test the ideas that we're working on here. So this is a fictitious original test that we have here. We observed statistically significant improvement in student grades as the percentage of canceled classes increased in all three controlled studies. So this is a little bit of the manuscript writing or the conservative writing that we use in science. But basically what it tells is that canceling classes makes students perform better in exams, which is not really, I would say, a fictitious example here. However, if I want to use the information from this original test here, then again, remember that this is a fictitious text that we have here. What I would say is that a study by Pan et al. Showed that canceling classes improved student grades, and then I'm listing the in-text citation. So what I'm doing here is really, and then at the end of the text itself, I'll have the list of references, and I'll state the names of the authors, the name of the publication, the journal, and so forth. So back to this section here that we have written ourselves. What I have is this first section is what we call integrating the source itself. So this is a little bit of a prelude, letting other people know that what comes next is not really my work. It has been done by someone else. And this part here is called the paraphrasing, where I'm explaining the idea being mentioned here in my own words, in my own style. I did not start off copying and pasting this. I just created it fresh and clear, and I'm just describing it in my own words, and I'm not changing the intended meaning. And the last part here is called the in-text citation, which links this here to the reference where people would need to read more, and that's what Mendeley can do automatically here. And sometimes other the style could differ. So this here is using an in-text citation that's in numeric format. So it has a number here and it's matched with the number down there. This is also something that can be done automatically by Mendeley itself. So these are a few pointers based on what we have actually discussed a bit earlier when it comes to plagiarism. And remember, always cite and never copy and paste. When it comes to similarity tools or plagiarism checkers, there are a multitude of those. Elsevier does not offer a plagiarism checker. However, Elsevier is part of a collective publisher initiative in partnership with Authenticate to have what's called the cross-check platform built on, which is based on the Authenticate engines, where we check the similarity, the text similarity with all the publications being submitted to Elsevier journals. However, this is a computerized tool that compares documents against documents. It's looking for text similarity, and it determines what's the percentage of a document. So clearly, if I have something that's 40% text similar to another paper, then it's definitely not okay. And that paper would be rejected without even looking, because it's a very high percentage. When it comes to lower percentages, we actually have to do the human assessment ourselves. If you are avoiding copy and paste completely while you are writing, you shouldn't be afraid of plagiarism checkers if you're writing in your own words. However, it needs assessment by a human to assess and judge if this is a plagiarism or not. As example, as I said, we would be expecting some text similarity when it comes to the methods section, for example, because you're describing tools and process or methods, reagents, equipment, software that other people within the same field are using as well. So that should be okay to have that text similarity, but then again, it's up to a human assessor to determine whether or not the text similarity amounts to plagiarism or not. And also remember that paraphrasing without proper acknowledgement remains plagiarism. So you could have 5% or 2% text similarity, but the entire article could be stolen because you have paraphrased somebody else's work and you've written it completely within your own voice. Then again, it remains plagiarism. And a very important point, if you are running a self-test or a self-check on your own work, make sure that the similarity checker does not keep a copy in its repository. That could create a problem because some similarity checkers, when you submit an article that you have written yourself, they keep a copy of it for later use. And then again, when you submit that article to your institution or to a journal and they're running the same similarity checker, the similarity checker already has a copy of that article within their database or the repository. They're telling you you have 100% matching with another article because that was also your own work. It takes a lot of effort to just explain this and get that sorted out. So just avoid it if possible. If you are using a plagiarism or a similarity tool yourself to pre-test your work. The golden rule for good similarity reports is copy paste should never be used within your writing. If you are copying and pasting and then modifying a paragraph, I guarantee you the similarity checker would get a trace of what has gone. You're using other people's voice, other people's sentence structure, to just avoid it completely. Write everything fresh based on what you've read elsewhere and then start working with it. So that's a little bit of an exercise before we jump into a quick demo on Mendeley itself. And I would have a poll showing for people who are attending on Zoom. If you are attending on Facebook, you can share your answers within the comments. So the poll should appear here. So please take a couple of minutes to answer those 4 questions as they would be appearing to you now. So far, only 15 people, 20 now. So please try to answer the poll that you can see on screen or write it down in the comment section if you are following us from Facebook before we could start proceeding with the last section of our training today. Okay, so I believe that we are yet to reach the 50% at least of our attendees today. Before we can end the poll and just discuss the results that you have seen here. Okay, so I'm gonna stop the poll and let's see what results did we come out of these. So the first question says, you used a concept that was mentioned in a published paper, but you paraphrased it, explained it in your own words, and the similarity tool says the essay has a similarity of 8%. Does this mean that everything is okay? Not really. We have to ask a very important question here. Did we put in the proper referencing and citations? Remember that paraphrasing does not mean no plagiarism. Similarity tools only get extrinsic or literal copying, plagiarism detected. So we have to make sure that we've done the proper referencing and the proper citations before we go forward with it. So, the second question, a very important paragraph in a paper discussed on an idea that needs to be included in your essay. Instead of copying and pasting directly into your document, you used an auto-paraphrasing tool to fix your paragraph and essays, you cited them. Remember the golden rule, do not copy and paste. If something contains copy and paste, then it's probably not okay. However, auto-paraphrasing tools, what they do is that they go through a sentence and they start replacing words with their synonyms. So you're still using other people's voice. And then you always risk that they would change a technical word with another synonym for that word from the dictionary. It results in very poor writing quality usually, and it results in sometimes incomprehensible ideas being discussed. Start writing ideas on your own. Do not use other people's style of writing and just change vocabulary by an auto-paraphrasing tool. Using other people's style of writing remains a form of plagiarism. Third one, can you cite a report that you prepared for another subject in your research? It is okay. However, it should be done on need basis. So if you are building upon previous work that you've done, you should cite that other work that you have done. You cannot recycle your own work really here. So it could be cited if you feel that this is relevant to the topic that you are done and it has already been published publicly. But if you have done a report for a class or as a part of your dissertation, it has not been published publicly, and you have written down those results and expanded on the analysis. It's not a copy for a word for word, then it could be actually expanded into our journal article itself. Four, you're referring to a legislative article that's a law, actually, or a regulation or a legislation that you are referring to. That's very important to your topic. So so you copy and paste it, put it in quotation marks and cite it. Is this okay? Yes, but just make a reference that this is law. This is a following item or an article in a law, but it is okay. This is actually a case where the exact phrasing is important for the result that you are working on. So as we proceed to the last part here, and we're going to do a quick demo on how Mendeley can help you convert this into this really while you are writing itself. This is what we're gonna do with Mendeley itself. Just first a bit of an introduction to what Mendeley is. It's a free reference manager. That's one half, and the other half is a free academic social network. It can help you organize your documents and references. It can help you collaborate and work within groups, share the same library, and share your ideas and concepts as well. And your comments on papers that you are reading together. So Mendeley can help you read together and communicate within a team, as well as write together with the same document using the same library and the same set of references there as well. So, and also it can help you store your own data, discover research as well, stay up to date, manage, look for career opportunities as well as funding. So just let's check quickly here how we can start using Get Started with Mendeley here. So if I visit mendeley.com for the first time, my internet is getting a bit sluggish, I would say. So while that page loads, for some reason, I think my browser might be overloaded. So if you are visiting mendeley.com for the first time, you would see a screen similar to this, and you can create a free account on Mendeley itself. That free account there could be used similarly on any Elsevier solution. So the account on Mendeley would work on Science Direct, would work on Scopus, would work on Researcher Academy. So it works on any Elsevier solution, whether it's paid or unpaid. You can also download the Mendeley software itself, and I can see that finally my browser is starting to respond better. Okay, so while it continues to load, you can download the Mendeley software on your computer. There is a version called the Mendeley Desktop that maintains an offline version. And also on mendeley.com, you have free cloud storage of 2 GB that you can use either for your own library, your own full texts, as well as you can use them for storing your research data, whether you're keeping them private or you are sharing them within your research team as well. So if you are downloading from here, if you are downloading the Mendeley Desktop or the new Mendeley Reference Managers, which depends on the cloud storage directly, I'm going to showcase quickly the Mendeley Desktop itself. So this is what the Mendeley Desktop software would look like. Here I have a library of the papers I have. Sometimes they could have the full text. Sometimes they could just be bibliographic information about a certain paper without the full text being on my computer. And I could always sync them with my cloud storage on my account on mendeley.com here. I could or start organizing them into folders here, and I could actually put in groups and share groups, so I can create a private group with the same team I'm working with. And if I'm doing so, if it's a private group, I can create 5 private groups up to 25 members each. And these private groups, I could share the full text freely with. On public groups, I can only share the citation data. So we could actually be reading the same PDF here, and we could be putting notes and comments here that would be visible to everyone in the group where I'm sharing this article itself. So how do I build this library? It's very easy. One way you could do this is by drag and dropping the PDF. However, if the PDF has not been prepared properly by the publisher, it could result in some mistakes. So as you can see here, so this here is a PDF I dragged and dropped within Mendeley here. As you can see, it's actually a very old document that has been digitized. So the PDF is not really very high quality, and its title has been automatically read. However, it's just looks weird with a lot of space bars, for example, here, because it was built on OCR character recognition. And also I cannot see where it was published or who the authors are. It's being identified as a journal article when in reality this is actually a report, not a journal article. So I can actually change any of these details manually by writing to make sure that the record is complete here, and that's the file that was used. There is a more reliable way to building your own library here. And so if I'm visiting mendeley.com and it's finally loaded here, so this is Mendeley here. I could create the account. If I go to downloads, I can see the downloads that I mentioned a bit earlier. I can download the Mendeley desktop, which works with the offline version, or the new reference managers, which works directly with the cloud. However, both things synchronize together. There are add-ons, and this is the very important add-on here called the web importer, which helps you fetch any paper being mentioned online into bibliographic data. And if you can have access to the PDF, Mendeley will fetch the PDF for you. The citation plugin is what works synchronized with your Microsoft Word or LibreOffice or BibTeX. And there is to go, if you want to read your articles and your library on the go, you can actually download them. It works with iOS and Google and Android as well. If I'm signed in to my account, I would need to put in my email. Elsevier will look if this email has ever been mentioned anywhere on Elsevier, on any Elsevier website. If it already exists, it will ask you for a password. If this account has never existed, it will ask you to register. You would need your first name, last name, and the password. And you'll be sent a confirmation email with a link to click, just that. Okay, so if I'm signed in, and I'm gonna show you what my signed in looks like. So this here opens on a Mendeley search. I could actually use Mendeley as a search engine to look up for articles across more than 100 million articles. So that's more than what's available on Scopus. So it contains some unindexed journals as well, or white papers that has been published, or and even more. And I can see here the synchronized version of my library, suggestions, whether articles or people to follow. I can look at my newsfeed, which looks like an academic social network. I can see people I'm following with their posts, and I can look for up people or look up articles. These are the groups I'm a member of, whether they're public groups or private groups. Data sets, so I could use Mendeley to store my own data sets as a cloud version, just as a backup. Or I could use it to share those data privately within my research group, or I could use them to publish my own research data sets completely publicly and make them freely available, and then take a link from Mendeley, a DOI link to attach to my paper as well. I can look up career opportunities and funding here. And if as you've seen earlier in the downloads, there is a web importer. It works with multiple browsers, such as Chrome, the one I'm using here, or Firefox and others, and Edge. So this button here, what it would do is that so I'm gonna be looking at any publisher. So it could be Science Direct. But usually Science Direct has a link, so I'll just open any article here. It's the same account that I used on Mendeley. Here I have institutional access, but if I'm not having an institutional access, this is an open access article anyway. Anyone can read it for free. About a little bit more than 20% of the journals on Science Direct are accessible. Here I can just export it to Mendeley or to any other format of reference manager I would be using, or I could download the PDF and drag and drop it. However, I could use this button here to start recognizing the article that's mentioned on the page, and anything that's an article that could be cited mentioned on the page will be detected by Mendeley by this little smart tool here. And what it would do is that it would identify all the articles in terms of bibliographic data. It would look up the full text PDFs and see if I have access to them across all publishers. And So here, as you can see, so this is the article that has been, this is the main article that's being described here. And it's telling me I can get the PDF. Here it's still, these are the references that are mentioned on page, whether they are the recommended articles here or the list of references mentioned in the article. So you could just import an entire article and every other article it cited in just one click. Here, so this PDF, I do not have access to it. It's been published by a publisher where I don't have a subscription. This here, I have the full text PDF. I could just mark them all and tell them, okay, if you can find the PDF, please add it to my library. This way I have this article and every article cited by it added in one click to my library. I could say, no, I just need this article here and I need the PDF if available. Add it to Mendeley. It's added to my cloud storage. And if I synchronize it on my Mendeley desktop here, if I click on synchronize, it would be added as well to my library here. So how do I use this in Microsoft Word? It's literally very easy and it takes just a minute. I click on tools, make sure that install Microsoft Word plugin here is active. And if I go to Microsoft Word or from the downloads section here on Mendeley, on the downloads, if I click here and click on download, there's also another plugin. So this Microsoft Word plugin works from the offline version on my computer. There is another plugin that imports directly from this here, the citation plugin. It works directly from the cloud storage. And remember, you can always synchronize both. So here, what I'm doing here is that I go to my Microsoft Word. I start typing something. And I start typing another idea as we have seen earlier on the section. And I want to cite this. I will go over to references. This here is the one connected to my Mendeley desktop. This here is the one connected to my cloud. I'll use this one for now. Insert citation. I search by author, title, or year in my library. So I can say 2020. And yes, this is the article I have from 2020. I could look by an author's name. Yes, this is the one. So it's showing me a preview based on my library and I'm clicking OK here. And here I'm entering another reference. I can remember the name of the title. It has micromechanics, for example. And yes, that was the article I was referring to here. So it could be just one article or multiple articles within the same citation, in-text citation. Here, sometimes you need to see your own library to remember something. So I can click on go to Mendeley. I can here, it's opening Mendeley again with two new buttons here because I called for Mendeley from within my Microsoft Word. I can control click multiple articles that I want to cite and click on cite here. And they have been cited. Then I can put in list of references at the end and ask Mendeley to automatically generate them here. And voila, it's been done. If I want to change the style, I can change the style here freely. So this is me using IEEE style or nature style, for example. If I change, so this is a numbered style. If I change the order of the references here, let me put this here and I just changed them around. And if I click on refresh, it's automatically refreshed. If I need to use another style, I can click on more styles here. So these are the ones installed. I can get more styles and install them. So for example, the American, I'm having a little bit of a sluggish connection. I can look up styles here. It has a very vast library of styles available here. And just select them and download them. So here it's, yes, it's starting to respond. And I could select and download any of these. And I can install them. Sometimes if you don't know a specific style, you can go to csl.mendeley.com. That's csl.mendeley.com. And I could look up a style or modify my own style. I can do a search by example or search by style name and download it to my Mendeley. Then again, there is a problem with my, my internet connection. So that should leave us at the at the end of our topic today. A quick demo on how I could use Mendeley for this. And we can take some questions before we can share the details for our certificate and the additional resources that you can find from Elsevier. Mr. Kabiro, if we can start a short Q&A session, and I'm sorry for going a little bit overboard.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Mr. Khalid, for the wonderful and very exciting, explanation on plagiarism, Mendeley, and what have you. Personally, I'm very much impressed, of course. Well, going by the next agenda, we're actually going to take questions, which will be anchored by Mr. Musa Muhammad. He's actually our assistant librarian. So I will hand over to him for him to read all the questions. Hello?
The organizing committee worked tirelessly to make this webinar a great success. Thank you all and stay safe.
Hello, everyone. I am Musa Muhammad, the Assistant University Librarian of Skyline University, Nigeria. I would like to commend Khalid for a wonderful presentation. On the point of our agenda, based on the question and answer, we have about 15 questions where some of our participants asked. One of the questions, which already you've answered it, is based on the certification. Would there be a link on certification of this wonderful program?
Yep, I'll share it at the very end of today's, just after the Q&A session, before we conclude our session today.
Which one of the attendee asked was, Mr. Khalid, my understanding of this highlights is that there must be empirical studies to be done in research. Is it not possible to undertake a sort of research that will not need to use statistical analysis?
Yeah, it does make sense. At some time, not all methodologies would require a statistical analysis. There are multiple methods. So the general idea is, if you can add statistical analysis, then you definitely should. Okay? If there is room in your research for statistical analysis, then it should be used. But some research methodologies do not require. So sometimes it could be theoretical mathematical work, so it doesn't really make sense to have statistical analysis. You are providing a statistical framework, or you are providing if you're providing mathematical framework, for example, then you really don't need statistics there. However, whenever convenient, one should use statistical analysis.
No name. When the speaker says review paper, does it mean a paper that does not involve the use of data from statistical analysis? You've answered that. Another question from Abdullah Mansour. He says, should we separate the results from the discussion, or is it better to combine them?
So I don't fully get the question. So it is asking about the results and the discussion. So what we would be doing generally is that you will be overviewing the results that you have obtained, showcasing what numbers and what values have you obtained, or if you are showcasing, for example, some survey work that's been done in social sciences, you'll be showing the data and that you have actually obtained while working with your own method. You'll try to visualize them, but the results part is more about what you are interpreting, what those results mean here. And you could be cross-referencing them with other results. You're showing us what to look for in those numbers, what those numbers actually mean, what do they signify, for example.
Hi, Dr.
So I hope this answers the question here.
Yeah, I probably answered that. The next question is from Hiba Salman. He says, hi, doctor. Can I ask you about the citation of patents? Is that true? Write it in how is that true?
Yes, you can definitely cite patents. This is very encouraged. If you have used ideas that were described in a patent, then definitely do describe those. If it's your own work, so we generally advise people, if you have an exciting idea that could be patented, please submit your patent application before you submit your journal article. If you have already submitted a journal article, then it's already been disseminated and cannot be patented. If you have submitted your own work as a patent and now you're writing your own article, you can actually cite the patent or the patent application. In that case, because it would be patent pending in your own work. Yes, this could be done. Also, yeah, so that definitely works. And if you're citing other people's patents, then again, if you're using other people's work, you should always cite. There is a question then, when in doubt, cite. If you're asking myself the question, should I cite or not, then you probably should.
Question is from Abdullah Mansour. Are the mentioned references counted within the similarities of plagiarism?
Mm-hmm. Your voice is breaking. I don't think I can hear you now.
Hello?
Hello, yes, I can hear you back now.
The question is from Abdullah Mansour. He says, are the mentioned references counted within the similarity of plagiarism?
Usually when there is an option in most similarity checkers where you can actually toggle whether or not the references should be counted within the similarity count. Usually it's usually a case where it's very popular to exclude references, because then again, you're citing the same article as many other people have cited it and you're writing in a very similar writing. So yeah, it's usually excluded. But then again, it could be toggled off for some cases. So sometimes if I'm suspecting that an article is a copycat with just paraphrasing, so you've just paraphrased somebody else's article completely, then I would expect that this very high similarity percentage to be also, you'll be also using their own references as well. So yeah, it happens.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is from Haidar Habib. Does Mendeley contain Arabic citation styles?
So Mendeley uses, so you can define, so as you can see here on screen, so there is the CSL Mendeley style. It's, you can actually define your own style. So you're only defining data fields here. So you're saying that this is a data field for an author, for a name of a journal and so forth. And you can use them with other languages. If I have here on my Mendeley desktop, I actually have a fictitious reference. It's not a real reference really, but this is something that's written in Arabic scripture here. So it should work. However, Scopus index journals require that the reference list be written in Latin characters. That's ABCD. So it would depend on what your journal allows you to do. If you are allowed to write references in other characters or other scripture than Latin, then yes, you can actually use Mendeley for this.
Okay, sir, thank you. And the next question is from Kasim Abiola Tijani. He says, how do I get soft copy of this presentation?
It's on the same link that we will use for that you will be able to get your certificate, and it will be mentioned in just a few minutes as we wrap up this session here.
Okay, thank you, sir. Abdullah Mansour asked about how to write references for reports of international organizations or directives of international microbiological criteria by Mendeley.
Okay, So it really depends on the style being mentioned here. So if I'm writing something that's submitted to a journal, then I would follow the referencing style implemented by this journal. Some Elsevier journals actually work on your paper your way method, which means that you are free to structure your article the way that's convenient. It usually follows the IMRAD structure. However, you can name your sections accordingly, and you can use any reference style. And after your paper is reviewed, they will tell you how to format your article to save you time for formatting when your article is not yet accepted. However, if I'm writing an article and I'm submitting it for an international organization, for example, then I could actually, I would need to, usually for international organizations, they have in-house style guidelines. So for example, you would expect the UN to have their own style, and they would tell you how the UN reports should be structured, how they should be formatted, and how the references should be styled. So they would have their own in-house style. That's definitely sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is coming from Azufa Hafsa. How to make sure that plagiarism checker, that plagiarism checker software or tool don't save text in its database.
It will tell you. So if you're using, so the similarity checker would tell you if your submission would be saved to repository or to their database or not. And many similarity checkers would actually enable you to toggle on or off this option if you are the one who has created the submission. So if you are in doubt and you're using an institutional version, you should contact your moderator. If you're using something personal just for this, you should be able to see the option within most similarity checkers. So that I think that should answer it.
So far, so good. These are the questions that we have, and we've taken them all. I would like to hand you over to Mr. Kabiru. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Khalid, for a wonderful presentation. We still have one item on the agenda, that's the vote of thanks. But I don't know if you can wrap it up from your own side by giving by giving the directives on how to, access the actual webinar and the certificate and what have you. And if you have any information with regards to the webinar, please go ahead.
I just need a couple of minutes to just conclude what we've discussed here. So these are final pointers when it comes to final ethical pointers. One of them is just to submit to just one journal only. Also, to have to declare any conflict of interest. You have to declare any manipulation you have done to your own data. If you are in doubt about anything, the main idea is to remain clear with your editor. They will help you make decisions at times. You need to educate yourself more about plagiarism and self-plagiarism. A link that we showed here was actually moved. I have updated the link on the slide that you should be able to download. So if you discover an error, you should contact your editor to correct it, provide more data, and also maintain records of your own research. Your own research could be challenged, or your data could be challenged 20 years from now. So always maintain them as well. Make sure that you know and trust your collaborators are not doing ethical violations. If your collaborators are doing ethical violations, the retracting, you share the responsibility as well as the credit. If your paper is retracted, then it affects you all. There is an Elsevier ethics toolkit and a link here for ethical information as well. So this is the link. I've updated the link here on plagiarism resources from Researcher Academy, and there are multiple links included within this link here. There are more into, if you are into writing review articles or systematic reviews, these are more clauses available on Researcher Academy for free discussing those topics. There are resources available on the coronavirus, coronavirus if you're working on it. All our content, all our articles, more than 38,000, last I checked, maybe 40,000 now, articles published by Elsevier this year on coronaviruses have been made available for free. And you can visit them on this link you can see here on the screen. It's a one page that's continuously updated with the latest about coronaviruses. There is also a directory on the COVID-19 here, full of free resources for healthcare providers, academic researchers, health educators and students, R&D professionals and engineers, media and librarians. So you could go there, find your own portal and find what Elsevier free resources are that could help you. If you are a healthcare provider, you can go directly to elsevier.health, and there are a lot of toolkits, guidelines, expert insights, and everything a healthcare provider would need that we can provide for them for free. If you need access to not just the content, if you need access to one of Elsevier's solutions that could help you within your research, you could request individual access to any of Elsevier technology solutions that would usually require a subscription. You can request access for free. And if you are visiting this link here, Else COVID-19 Hub, this is the Coronavirus Research Hub. You can request free access on individual basis here. So, and remember, you can always go for building your own capacities. When it comes to free online courses that pertains to your research, whether you're looking for funding opportunities, or if you are looking for example, for courses on more onto writing or ethics, or any other really topic here that you would need to work with, more onto peer review, for example, on promoting your article. Here is about ethics, as you can see, and more resources that you would need to use yourself. All of these courses, all of those materials are available for free. And this would bring me here to the end part of our presentation today. To stay in communication with us here and to download the materials, I think should come up on screen now. So you can follow us on our Facebook page where we are live streaming this webinar now, Elsevier Africa. You can follow up on our group where we have a lot of two-way discussions here. So, and it's also a way to stay up to date. It's called Elsevier Community. So there's Elsevier Africa page, and there's Elsevier Community, and there's our YouTube channel, Elsevier Africa as well, where the recording will be later on posted. To get your certificate, you would need to go to researcheracademy.com and sign up or sign in if you have already an account with Elsevier. Once you have signed in, so completely after you have signed in here, you would open a new tab and use this link here, bit.ly/ELS Skyline University Nigeria 1020. So that's December 2020. And this link here would take you to the page containing where you can download the presentation, as well as download your certificate, as well as download today's certificate for today. There is an instruction file on how to download your certificate, so please read it to make sure that your names are displayed correctly, and it will tell you how to troubleshoot if you have any problem. And finally, you'd have to insert this claim code here when needed. So please take a screenshot of this screen here, and just make sure, since we're talking about ethics, to keep this only within the people who have attended today's webinar. Please do not share it with anybody who has not attended this webinar live as well. So this should bring us to the end of our presentation today. I would like to go back to Mr. Kabiru here. You can have my email. If you have any inquiry related to your certificate or to the webinars in general, please send to the webinar inquiries here, webinar queries at elsevier.com, and please feel free to contact me whenever needed on my email here. And this brings me to the end of my presentation here. I'd like to relinquish back to our general host, Mr. Kabiru, and to the University Registrar for final remarks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khalid. We really appreciate all the help and the contribution and the time that you have given us. So far, so good. I think we're actually going to take the last, item on the agenda, which is the vote of thanks. But it will be given by the head of Student Service Department of Skyline University, Nigeria, I'm sorry to inform you that Mr. Registrar right now is in the meeting. So Mr. Nazim Islam, who is actually the head of SSD, Skyline University Nigeria, will be taking, giving us the vote of thanks. Over to you, Mr. Nazim.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Kabiru Garba, Head Librarian, Skyline University, Nigeria, for organizing such an informative webinar, Writing Without Plagiarism and Proper Citation Using Medley. Wow. On behalf of Skyline University, Nigeria, I must mention our deep sense of appreciations to our Pro-Chancellor, Mr. Nitin Anand, and our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Sudhakar Kota, for all encouragement and supports. Our special acknowledgement and appreciation goes to the host presenter, Mr. Khalid Shalim. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you for your valuable time. We shall be happy to collaborate you more. Equally, our heartfelt gratitude to all our participants who blessed us with their presence and active participation. Lastly, I must commend and dedications and commitment of our organizing committee who worked tirelessly to make this webinar a grand success. Thank you all, and stay safe. Over to you, Kabiru.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nazim. And of course, on behalf of Skyline University, Nigeria, I personally want to thank you, Mr. Khalid Shalan. I think this is actually the beginning of our collaboration, indeed. And we'll be very much happy to explore more so as to connect as expected. And with these few words, I think this is actually, I'm calling it a day. We're actually at the end of the webinar as expected. So I think everybody can just log out. Thank you very much. Really appreciate, and looking forward for organizing another webinar, which will be coming shortly. Thank you once again. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye-bye.